The sound of a woman's sobs echoed through the dimly lit garage. Oil-stained tools lay scattered across the floor, and the faint hum of a broken-down car filled the silence. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag, his heart tightening as he turned toward the crying figure standing at the doorway. It was her, the woman who'd once carried a part of his body inside her, the stranger who'd received his kidney. But as her trembling voice broke the still air, Daniel realized she hadn't come to thank him. She'd come because life had shattered her again, and this time, she needed more than a kidney to survive. Daniel Hayes had always been the kind of man who fixed things. Cars, fences, even broken toys for the neighborhood kids. His hands could mend anything except the emptiness inside his chest. Ever since his wife, Rachel, died 3 years ago from a rare kidney disease, Daniel had lived with a quiet ache that no wrench could loosen. He ran a small auto garage in a tired corner of town. It was enough to keep food on the table for his 8-year-old son, Ethan, who still asked questions Daniel didn't know how to answer. "Dad, why did Mom have to die?" Sometimes, Daniel would say, forcing a smile. "God needs the good ones early so they can fix heaven too." But inside, he felt broken. One rainy afternoon, as Daniel sat eating cold leftovers, the radio played an interview with a woman named Grace Miller. She was 32, a nurse, and desperately searching for a kidney donor. Her voice cracked as she spoke about her little sister who had died waiting for a transplant. "I just want to live," she said softly. "Not for me, but for my son. He's only 6. He still needs me." Daniel froze. That sentence, "he still needs me," hit him like lightning. It was what he'd whispered to God the night Rachel passed away. And now, hearing another parent say the same thing, it felt like a sign. 2 weeks later, after a whirlwind of tests and quiet nights of prayer, Daniel walked into the hospital as a donor. He didn't tell Grace who he was. He didn't want recognition or thanks. He just wanted to give someone the second chance his wife never had. The surgery was painful. The recovery, slow. But when Daniel saw Grace's picture in the newspaper, smiling, alive, holding her little boy, something inside him healed for the first time in years. He taped that newspaper clipping to the wall of his garage, right above the workbench. Every time life felt heavy, he'd look at it and whisper, "You made the right choice, Danny." But months later, life began to slip back into its gray routine. Ethan was growing fast, but Daniel could see how much his boy missed a mother's warmth. The house felt too quiet, dinners too empty. And even though he never said it aloud, Daniel sometimes wondered if anyone remembered the man who'd given up a part of himself for a stranger. Then one cold evening in October, as he was closing up the garage, headlights flashed across the cracked concrete floor. A car door slammed. When Daniel looked up, there she was, Grace Miller. Tears streaked her face. Her shoulders shook as she whispered, "Daniel, I didn't know where else to go." He dropped the rag in his hand, his heart pounding. The woman who had once carried his kidney, who was supposed to be living a happy, healthy life, was now standing before him, broken. Grace looked thinner, her eyes red and hollow. Daniel guided her to a chair, confused but gentle. "Grace, what happened?" Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I lost everything, Daniel. My job, my home, and my son." Daniel's breath caught. She explained between sobs. After the surgery, she tried to rebuild her life. But medical bills, long recovery, and an abusive ex who'd taken her child in a custody battle had left her shattered. "I thought a new kidney meant a new start," she whispered. But life just didn't care. Daniel listened quietly, his hands trembling as he handed her a cup of coffee. He had never been good with words, but his silence carried more comfort than any sermon could. 4 days after that night, Grace kept showing up at the garage, sometimes to talk, sometimes to sit quietly in the corner while Daniel worked. She helped clean, answered phones, made coffee for customers, anything to feel useful again. Ethan grew fond of her quickly. "She's funny, Dad," he'd whisper. Like Mom was. For the first time in years, laughter filled the garage again. Grace began to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. She found peace in small things, the hum of an engine, Ethan's innocent jokes, and Daniel's unspoken kindness. One afternoon, as the sun set behind the dusty windows, Grace said softly, "You saved my life, Daniel. But I think you've been saving it again, every single day." Daniel smiled faintly. "We're both just trying to fix what's broken." But the universe wasn't done with them yet. A week later, Daniel received a letter from the hospital. They needed to run follow-up tests. There was a complication with his remaining kidney. His body wasn't healing as expected. He hid the letter, not wanting Grace to feel guilty. But she found it anyway. "Daniel, you can't go through this alone," she said through tears. "You gave me life. Let me take care of you now." He shook his head. "You already did. You brought hope back into this place." That night, as the rain poured outside, Grace prayed silently beside Ethan's bed, asking God not to take away the man who'd given her everything. Months passed. Daniel's health declined slowly, though he never complained. The garage stayed open, thanks to Grace, who managed everything while Daniel rested. Ethan called her Aunt Grace, and their home began to feel warm again, like the family they both had lost and found in one another. But one morning, Grace received a call that changed everything. The hospital had found a donor kidney, a perfect match, and Daniel's name was at the top of the list. Tears streamed down her face. She couldn't believe it. The surgery went well. For the first time, Daniel woke up feeling whole, not because of the new kidney, but because of the love that surrounded him. Grace was sitting by his side, holding Ethan's hand. When he finally returned to the garage weeks later, he found something waiting for him. A sign, freshly painted by Grace and Ethan, hanging above the door. Hayes and Grace Auto, fixing cars, healing hearts. He laughed through tears, pulling them both into a hug. The days that followed weren't perfect. Life never is. But they were beautiful. Grace got her nursing license reinstated. Ethan had 2 people cheering for him at every school game. And Daniel, once a lonely widower, found himself surrounded by the very thing he thought he'd lost forever: family. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Grace stood outside the garage, looking at the sign. "You know," she said softly, "when I came here crying that night, I thought I'd lost everything. But I found the only thing that really matters." Daniel looked at her with tears in his eyes. "And what's that?" "Love that expects nothing in return." He smiled, his heart finally at peace. That's the kind that saves lives. Moral of the story: true kindness asks for nothing, yet it always finds its way back to the one who gives it.